To the east, they had a lot of battles. The main one was the Battle of Gettysburg, and the South had momentum. They were winning a lot of battles and being very successful to the east, a lot more than they were to the west. Well, General Lee, remember the Southern leader, General Robert E. Lee, moved into Pennsylvania, hoping to surprise the Union and eventually capture Washington D.C. Well, the two armies met up in eastern Pennsylvania, in a small town called Gettysburg, and they had probably the most famous battle of the whole war. On the first day of fighting, there were 3 days of fighting. On the first day, the Confederates were successful. They drove the Union out. They would not let the Union through. They pushed them back. They were actually, they were the ones that were trying to storm through. So they were getting through. They were doing what they wanted to do. The Union regrouped, and on the second day, they were more successful. They kind of pushed back a little bit and kind of evened things out. And this led us to the third and what would be the final day of the Battle of Gettysburg. And what happened is there were a lot of casualties the first 2 days, especially on the south. But on the third day, Lee ordered General Pickett to lead 15,000 men and charge towards the Union. Like, we're just going all in. We were charging the Union. We're going after them, and we're gonna go. Well, the big problem with this is they had to march through an open field to get to where the Union was, and this open field was about 1,000 yards long and came up on a steep slope where the Union could sit and see them and fire at them and shoot them one after another. And this was known as Pickett's Charge. And this was just devastating for the South. They just got so many people killed because of this. And Pickett was named after George Pickett, who was the guy who was leading them at the time on the charge. But just row after row of Confederate troops were shot and killed, and the Union went on to win this victory at Gettysburg. And with that, and at the same time, the Battle of Vicksburg going on in the West that I explained to you earlier, it marked the turning point of the war. This was when the North really, really took control. It went from being close back and forth to not close. The Gettysburg Address, after the Battle of Gettysburg, they had more than 50,000 people that were killed or wounded there, and they had built a cemetery. And this is like 5 months later, and they had President Lincoln come and dedicate the cemetery to all those that had lost their lives. And he gave us a speech. It was a very short speech, but he gave a speech, and it was known as the Gettysburg Address. And it's probably the most famous speech any president's ever given. And it starts with 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation. Well, 407 years ago. 407 years. How many years is that? Well, a score is 20 years. So 4 would be 4 times 20, so it's 80. And 7 is 87. So 87 years ago, which 87 years prior to this was 1776. So he's saying, 87 years ago, we developed a new country, and now here we are fighting to make the country whole, make it better, get it back to the way that we originally planned on having it. Well, the success for the North had them go to a strategy known as total war. And it was Grant's plan on ending the war and finishing this up. He just wanted to destroy everything, destroy the South's ability to fight, the South's ability to do anything. So what they started doing was destroying everything in their path. Now, we watch The Patriot. This kind of reminds me of the way Tavington was in The Patriot. And that's not to say Grant was a jerk like Tavington, but it was basically do whatever it takes to get this war over with. So that's what they did. They would go through and they would win, and they would just destroy everything that they saw. They would destroy food, equipment, livestock, houses, anything that could be useful for the South, they destroyed. Um, Unfortunately, they even went after some civilians, killed some civilians, and it just wasn't Grant. It was all of the North started doing this. They wanted to get this war over. Um, a famous general was Philip Sheridan, and he was successful at the Battle of Shenandoah. William Tecumseh Sherman, he captured Atlanta and began what was called the March to the Sea. And this is a very famous thing from the Civil War, where they basically marched from Atlanta all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, just destroying everything that came in their path. Because it was all Southern territory, so anything and everything that they saw, they destroyed. So we were just totally taking everything that we could.